Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today on this. I don't know, it's raining at least where I'm at. This will be our final Spark Community of Practice for this school year, and we are super excited today to have Andrea King joining us to go over wrapping up end of the year. Now, after Andrea talks about her content, I'll have a few housekeeping items that we'll talk about at the end. And then Benjamin's putting some of the links to those items in the chat, but I'll take questions about those after Andrea presents. So thank you for joining, everyone. And Andrea, I'll turn it over to you.
All righty. Thank you, Rachel. So my name is Andrea King. I am the project manager for special education personnel. My background is I'm a speech pathologist. This is my 16th year in education, so I've been around for a while. Okay, so we are going to wrap up the end of the year. You guys have made it. Congratulations. There's light at the end of your tunnel. Let me get in present mode. Sorry, y'all. Okay, so today I want to celebrate your guys' successes as well as the success of your students. Prepare for those transitions, whether it be from one site to another, or if the student is transitioning from one district to another. Make sure all of your paperwork is in compliance, and then let's take a moment to reflect and grow on what you guys have learned this year and what you would like to learn. Okay, so we all know it's the end of the year. Which best describes your stamina? Are you the stay strong, school year's almost over, I got this, or are you just hanging on by a thin thread, just trying to make it through the end of the school year? I'm one of those where some days I'm like, yes, I've got this. And then other days I was like, okay, at 3:30 yet. Everybody has those feelings at the end of the year. Part of your successes that you guys really need to celebrate student growth. Your students have come such a long way since the beginning of the school year, whether it be academically, emotionally, behaviorally, or maybe all of the above. You guys have poured into your students and the progress is showing. They've made progress with their IEP goals. You've had positive behavior changes. And then you've also learned so much as a teammate on your team. And you've worked with lots of different service providers, your OTs, your PTs, your speech language pathologists. You guys have collaborated as a team to help support each student's successes. So that's something that you guys need to celebrate. And then looking internally as well, that personal growth. So what have you taken away from this year that you want to continue on for next year or set those goals? So when you reflect on your year, think about what went well. What challenges did you overcome? We all know that not every day is roses and daisies. We have our challenging days, but you persevered and you survived those challenging days. And hopefully you took something away from that and are able to build upon that. And what are you most proud of? Whether it be a certain student that you really poured a lot into that you've seen the success, or a lesson, or just, you met goals for yourself. You guys have come a long way. And so teaching may be one of the hardest things that you've ever done, but it's also one of the most rewarding jobs. So keep that in mind. Okay, reframing the narrative on student success. So with a particular student in mind, identify those hardest moments or that hardest moment. Do you know why it was the hardest moment, whether it be academically, behaviorally, and then the student's strengths? A lot of times it's easy to identify the student's weaknesses, but also identifying those strengths, we can help build upon those weaknesses. And you all know, I know I'm preaching to the choir, with any student, any educator, any parent, we have to be able to build that connection in order to make growth. And then also looking at you as the educators, focusing on self-care for yourself. We need to be able to have what we need to pour into others. In order to do that, we have to make sure that we're also taking care of ourselves. So, team success. You guys have worked hard as a team. You've collaborated with the gen ed teachers, any of the staff partnerships, your related service providers, if there are any agencies that are housed within your school, and then making those connections with the families. So when you're preparing a student to transition from one site to another, let's make sure that, we're preparing them as a student and then also preparing them for the next team. If that student has any devices or AT that they use, make sure that goes with them and that the team that's receiving that student is aware of that. I know that in the past, I personally have been expecting devices in different AT, and I'm like, I don't know where it is. It got lost in the school mail, but at least I knew about it so we could get in contact with our AT department and get that for the student quickly. So that's really important. Make sure that when you're preparing that student, that all of your paperwork is up to date. We want to make sure that that receiving team has everything that they need in order to be compliant and to help support that student. So make sure that you have that solid line of communication with the receiving team. Or if you're on the flip side and you're receiving a student, make sure you ask all the questions so that you know what the student needs and how you can meet their needs in order for them to be successful. So we always had an AT handoff. Types of AT, I could go on and on about the different AT that students use. This was just a little glimpse. Communication devices, this was a biggie in our district because behavior is communication. So if a student was struggling behaviorally, that would be one of the first things we would ask. Well, do they have any communication device? Do they have a reward system, token economy? Do they have a visual schedule? So these are all things that are important to think about, but they're also easily to forget in everything that happens at the end of the year. So just if you need to make yourself a checklist, go ahead, whatever helps you to make sure that you're sending that with your students so that they have it for next year. Do an inventory of the device and items that you currently have. And we did this per student. If you guys want to do it per class, that's fine. Whatever works best for you all. If you need to update anything, documents, clean and label equipment items, if anything's broke, we would always let our AT department know because you want to start the school year off fresh with everything right then and there. You don't want to start the school year off with a device not working and then that student is left without for a little bit. You want to be able to pick off where you guys left off. Okay, progress reports. So the purpose of progress reports, I'm sure you guys already know because you've already done them, is to inform parents of the grading methods or criteria that were used to evaluate their students' progress, how the student is functioning, and what progress is being made. So students should get progress reports at least as often as report cards are issued for general education students. So most Oklahoma school districts operate on a 9-week grading period. Some report cards are sent home semester. Make sure you know what grade goes home semester and then what grades are 9 weeks, because that student should be getting a special education progress report whenever they get a report card. So you can base the progress on work samples, checklist, those curriculum-based measurements. If you have any benchmarks, data collections, observations, these are all things that you can use to measure the student's progress toward achieving those individualized goals on the IEP. To generate progress reports, if you all need a refresher, you go to the tools and then you click on the wizards, and then you want to select the progress report that's under the wizards. And I can't tell you how many times I'm guilty of not selecting the correct reporting period, and then I couldn't move on. I was like, oh, I didn't select the reporting period. So make sure that you get that correct drop down, and you can do it either by semester or quarter, whichever is the appropriate grading period. So then you'll want to you can check all of your students that need to have a progress report, and then you'll hit the continue button. As a rule of thumb, I always advise my teachers and service providers, you need to have at least 4 to 6 weeks of data for a progress report. So let's just say the student's annual IEP was held April 10th, and the last day of school is May 15th. You're going to want to do that progress report because you're within that 4 to 6 week time frame, and you should have enough data to report progress toward achieving that goal or goals. So in this instant, where the progress report or the annual IEP was April 10th, the first progress report would be the fourth quarter or the semester, depending upon if it was a quarterly or semester report card. And then the second progress report would be the end of the first quarter, and then so on. And then you can scroll down and you'll update the current target score. If they have objectives, you'll update that objective score, update it all, and then make sure you hit save. I've done it a couple times where I go to the next student, I'm like, oh man, I didn't save that. So make sure you could click save and next. And there's a box at the bottom before you click update and go to the next student where you can put your contact information. That's optional. I always put it in case parents forgot my email address or my phone number and extension where they could reach me. When doing progress reports, especially if you're the special education teacher and you have related service providers that are on the student's caseload, communicate with them when you're done entering your information and ed plan for the progress reports. Because if you create that progress report and they haven't entered their information, it gets a little messy. So just let them know, hey, my information's ready. You let me know when you're ready so I can print them. And then you'll send that progress report home with a report card. And then a step that's easy to forget because you've spent a lot of time collecting the data, measuring the student's progress, is to enter in the contact log that progress report was sent home. Okay, summary of performance. So I don't know if any of you all have a caseload with a senior on it, but I'm just going to give you guys some information on the summary of performance. So the purpose of this summary of performance is to let the parents know about the student's academic achievement and functional performance, along with any recommendations on how to assist their student in meeting those post-secondary goals. So anytime a student graduates with a high school diploma or when those IDEA services cease, you have to do a summary of performance. And along with that summary of performance, you'll have to do a meeting invitation and then also a written notice to parent. Um, so if the IDEA services cease, that would be when the student reaches the age of 22 if they have not received that regular high school diploma. And in the written notice, you'll need to notify the parent that the LEA's, which is the local education agency's obligation, I know we have a lot of acronyms that we throw out there, to provide FAPE ends when that student receives the high school diploma. So therefore, all of the student services on the IEP are ceased as well. And another important factor that a lot of teacher of records don't really think of is to update that contact information, because after the student graduates, the state needs a high percentage of exiters to participate in those post-school outcomes survey. Um, and so that's just really helpful to the schools and to the state on how we can improve effective transition services and programs for students. So make sure you have that updated email, phone number for the parent and the student. And then it's always nice to let them know, like, hey, you're going to get a post school outcome survey. Please make sure that you participate in it. Students should have the opportunity to be an active participant when you're drafting or developing that summary of performance. I've included a link to a guidance brief on the summary of performance that you guys can check out if you have further questions. It just kind of goes through the steps, a lot of what you've already seen, but why it's important, why we do it, and things, and a little bit more information and things like that. So the required information on a summary of performance, you also have to have those post-secondary goals for that student. So the student has been doing a lot of transition goals, and they've had transition services. So now we need to set those post-secondary goals for them. So I think I've already hit most of these bullets. You'll have to have the meeting invitation, the summary of performance, and within that summary of performance, you'll have a summary of the student's academic achievement and functional performance, and then any recommendations on helping that student meet their post-secondary goals. So if the student's going to attend a career tech, or if they're going to enroll in some sort of transition service, if they need assistance, or if they're going to need some sort of accommodations, that's where you would write that. And then you'll have the written notice that goes along with that SOP, and then the contact log. So here's an example student summary of performance. And it might be a little hard for you all to read. Hopefully you'll be able to get a copy of the slides and then look at it. So you just kind of go through on the summary of academic achievement, where the students graduating from, what categories they were served under, what classes they were enrolled in. If you have any information on benchmark assessments or the most updated cognitive and academic assessments, you can include that. Their overall GPA, what they need in order to be successful at school, I would include that, the different related services. And if they continue to make progress on their goals, that's also important to note. And then if they use the general education curriculum, if they have modified curriculum, those are all things that you can include on that SOP under the academic achievement and functional performance. And then recommendations, You guys, this is really important. Because you guys have been doing a lot of the work in class, and some parents don't know what that looks like or all of the modifications. Yes, they've heard it in the IEP meeting, but really how that student uses those modifications in the classroom, um, and what they're really good at and how they succeed is also important to include in that portion for the post-secondary goals. Um, what their day looks like, if they have paraprofessional support, if they're on a shortened school day, I would include that, because if they're not attending a full school day and they go to a full day transition assessment or a transition program, that might be overwhelming for them. Um, so you might put that in your recommendation. You might want to look at a modified day for your transition program. And then this is to help you guys with the written notice for the SOP. The purpose of the written notice is that obviously you guys were proposing to conduct an SOP meeting. And under the explanation and rationale, obviously the school proposed to hold the SOP meeting to review the academic and functional performance. You want to summarize that progress made that they received while being in special education, and then again to provide any recommendations that may help the student to meet those post-secondary goals, whether that be in education, employment, independent living, etc. And this is very like bare bones. Obviously, you would want to beef this up, right? But just to kind of help you if you've never done one before, you definitely, this would be like the bones of what you need to include. Any options considered, and reasons refused. Oops, I see a typo, sorry. The team considered continuing SPED services, but that was rejected because the student met graduation requirements and they received a standard diploma, or that they aged out of eligibility services. They reached that maximum age of 22. Any evaluation procedures, you guys want to make sure that you include everything that you look at. So you're looking at the most recent IEP, the MEECs, academic records and transcripts, state and district assessments, any benchmarks, those transition assessments, observations, progress reports. Look at the whole gamut of everything that you used for that SOP. And anything that's relevant to the proposal or refusal, I always advise teams put down the members that were there for the meeting. So you're going to have the student and the parent, gen ed teacher, SPED teacher, an administrative representative, anybody else who attends, related service providers, and then make sure that the parent gets a copy of their parent rights if they haven't already received them for that school year. Usually they're provided during the annual IEP, but some parents want another copy, and that's perfectly fine to give them another copy. Okay, making sure that your files are compliant. So we all know there's a lot of paperwork in special education. I would always joke with parents, I'm like, oh, you're signing a lot of paperwork. You probably wish you were getting a new car, but you're not. I'm sorry. You're just signing special education paperwork. Um, so for every IEP meeting, you should have the meeting invitation, the finalized IEP, a progress report, and a written notice. So those 4 documents. The meeting invitation, you're going to want to document that the parents were emailed, proposed dates and times, or phone call, however you guys do it, to schedule the IEP meeting. And then the parent confirmed the meeting on whatever date and time. And then document that the meeting invitation was emailed or sent home with the student, however it was sent home to the parents. And I personally always included a copy of the LNH scholarship information, parent rights, parent survey. Um, and then we didn't have the OAP parent brochure back then, but if you have a student who's participating in OAP, I always sent it with the meeting invitation because sometimes I would forget after the meeting. Um, you guys can do whatever works best for you. And then make sure that you finalize that IEP, because if you don't finalize the IEP, it goes away after 30 days in Ed Plan. It will only stay a draft for 30 days. So finalize that IEP and then make sure that you upload the signatures with the IEP. I can't tell you how many times we would go if a student is moving from one district to another to transfer those student records and email it to them. And I'm like, oh no, we don't have a signed IEP. This does not represent us well. So please make sure that you have the team signatures for the IEP uploaded to EdPlan. And then on the IEP, also make sure that the parents have initialed that they've received all of their parental consent documents. So the LNH, parent rights, parent survey. That's an easy box to miss because it's a teeny tiny initial at the bottom. And then there should be 4 quarters completed for the progress report, or 2 semesters, however the student's reporting period is. So make sure that they have that as well. And then you'll do your written notice for the annual IEP. And so I wrote at the bottom what you needed to update the contact log. So you should have at least 4 entries for every IEP meeting. That the parents were emailed the proposed dates and times to schedule the meeting, or told over the phone, however you did it, that they received the meeting invitation, that the IEP meeting was held, and that they received a finalized copy of all of their paperwork. And we had a sweet compliance administrative assistant, and she would always email me. I always forgot to update the contact log. So eventually the district came out with a checklist, and I used that as my visual. And I would go through each student and make sure that I had all of this done by the end of the year so that their file was compliant. For progress reports, here's the steps to do your progress report. So you're going to add a contact, and this is for the contact log, updating that. You'll select parent contact, the contact method. It could be an email. If you emailed it, the only option, if you print it, that I think is closest is letter. I know it's not really a letter, it's a progress report, but that's the closest thing that PCG has to offer us. Then the person's contacted would obviously be the parents and the guardians. The contact date would be the date that that progress report was sent home. And then the result would be that it was either emailed or sent home with the student in the backpack. And this will make more sense when you go into EdPlan. I'm such a visual person. I should have taken a screenshot and showed it to you guys. This is me thinking out loud, so sorry. If you want to just keep those steps handy when you do it, that will help. Okay, ESY. That stands for Extended School Year. So what is extended school year? I'm sure you guys have heard summer school, there's ESY, there's Literacy Academy, there's all these programs that go on during the summer. So what exactly is ESY? So each LEA or school district must provide extended school year services to students who need such services to receive FAPE, so that free appropriate public education. So ESY is for students who are on an IEP, and they continue to need these services to maintain academic or functional progress beyond what is the normal school year. So beyond that school calendar year. We have to be careful because beyond the normal school year doesn't mean just during the summer. Beyond the normal school year can also include like the 2 weeks out, the 2 weeks that schools are out for winter break. So just keep that in mind when you're talking to parents. It's beyond the normal school year. This has to be considered annually for students on an IEP. So there's a drop down on the services page in Ed Plan, and it says I or ESY is required or is not required. A lot of teams, if you have an annual IEP that's or a subsequent IEP that's due at the beginning of the school year, you might not have enough data to determine if that student is going to need ESY. So you'll see IEPs that have that drop down selected that says the team will determine if ESY is required by the date entered above. And typically that date is before the end of the school year. So you have to meet to discuss ESY eligibility before the end of the school year. If you have enough data and you know that the student isn't going to need ESY, you guys can certainly go ahead and select that the team determined ESY is not necessary at this time. A good rule of thumb is if parents mention ESY or if a related service provider mentions it, go ahead and do the ESY determination. It's kind of like I always tell my teachers, if the parents mention a paraprofessional, go ahead and do the paraprofessional rubric. Same thing with ESY. If ESY is mentioned, go ahead and do that ESY determination. It's good data for everyone to consider when determining if that student needs services to provide FABE beyond the normal school year. So here's what that ESY determination looks like. And you can find this in the document section of the student's IEP. When you go to the documents page, you'll see extended school year determination. So there are 12 questions that the team goes through. And you'll notice that this one doesn't have draft at the top. You can write draft on it because you want to make sure that you're not predetermining as a school team the ESY eligibility. So you're going to go through as a IEP team, so parents and school, discuss the degree of disability, the degree of regression. So this is where you're going to have your data for the degree of regression. Let's say you come back from winter break and that student, it's taking a long time to recoup those skills and you're having to reteach what you've already taught. And it might take a week, it might take a month for that student to regain the skills that they had before they left for that break. So this is why your data is so important. Make sure you have that data because it will help drive the ESY determination decision. The ability of parents to provide educational structure at home. A lot of parents work during the summer and they're not able to. Go ahead and note that. If the parents have their student in a lot of different camps throughout the summer, that doesn't look like an educational setting. So just make note of that. The student's rate of progress, again, this is where you're going to have your data and your progress reports. What is their rate of progress compared to peers? Behavioral problems. If the student has behavior goals, I would note that here. If they have an FBA and a BIP, any token economy system, because this is also information that is going to be passed on to the ESY teacher. And so they're going to want to know this as well. If the student has any physical problems, if they receive like PT, OT services, if they have any AT to meet those disabilities, that's also important to note in the physical problems. The list of availability of alternative resources. I've seen a lot where teachers will put, they participate in the local library program. You can ask the parents if the student is going to different camps over the summer, if they have any resources that the student can use over the summer. The ability of the student to interact with children who are non-disabled. Some students, it's really hard for them to get out in public and be social. It might give them a lot of anxiety or it'll be overstimulating. So this is just another way to document what interactions that student has with non-disabled peers over the beyond the school year when they're not in school. For the areas that need attention, you want to list if it's math, reading, writing, behaviorally, what areas are a weakness that are documented on that IEP that are needing that individualization, if I can talk today, and those goals. For vocational needs, if the student's early elementary, you can put NA. That's fine. If they're pushing secondary, definitely list their vocational needs. And then any other relevant factors. This is where I would ask parents, like, what do you have any concerns? Is there anything that the team should consider that wasn't already discussed as to why you feel that your student is eligible for extended school year services? It's kind of an open-ended question, so that's up to the team. Okay, so along with ESY determination, you also have to do an amendment to document the ESY paperwork. So you'll have a meeting invitation, it'll be an IEP amendment, or if you have a subsequent that's coming due soon, and the student's going to go to ESY, do yourself a favor and combine all of that into one meeting. You don't need to meet twice. So then you'll have that ESY determination documentation, and then again, the written notice and the contact log. And again, I wanted to provide you guys with some guidance for that ESY documentation on the IEP. This is very, very bare bones. You're going to have to provide more details. So in the objective statement, document the school proposal for the ESY determination. For parent concerns, obviously you want to go through that ESY determination form, and then go through the IEP and ask the parents if they have any concerns. You're going to add the ESY goals. So keep in mind that the ESY goals aren't going to be new goals. You're not reinventing the wheel. These are new goals. Not new goals. These are goals that the student currently has that they need to work on outside of that school calendar year to maintain those skills. So some teams think that if you're going to ESY, you're receiving every service that is necessary. That's not true. That's not the case. As a team, you're going to determine what services the student needs to maintain that progress. So for example, if the student is receiving reading, math, and writing services, but they didn't regress in math, they regressed in the reading and the writing, then as a team, you all might make the decision that the student is only going to receive the reading and writing services during ESY. You'll add the service delivery, and then you'll want to, at the very bottom, update that ESY programmed. So if it says that it was or will be determined, you want to change that to the IEP has determined that ESY is required. That's if the student is going. If the student is not going, then you'll just choose that the team determined that ESY is not required. So if the student is attending ESY, most likely it's at a site that the student doesn't currently attend. Like all the students might be centrally located. So keep that in the back of your mind when you're talking to parents. Transitions are hard for gen ed students and especially for some sped students. And if they don't transition well, the team needs to consider how are they going to do during ESY. So it's important that if they have a BIP, that BIP gets sent with them to ESY along with their IEP, because the ESY team is going to need to know what goals that student is working on and what those services look like. Make sure that they have parent and guardian contact information. Sometimes parents forget to update that information with the school, especially if it gets changed after they enroll their student. And a lot of times the special education teacher or even the general education teacher, they have the most current information, but it doesn't match what's in the school system. So please make sure that ESY team has that most updated contact information. If the student has any assistive technology, make sure that it's working when you send it, and that it gets there with the student. Any communication devices, if the student has a particular curriculum that they use, that's a good idea to send that as well. Any materials that might be related to a service like PT, OT, speech, you're going to want to make sure that those service providers have the materials that they need as well. If the student has any visuals, any token economy systems that they use, these are all really important to make sure that we transition that student to ESY. Okay, so let's say the school team determined that the student meets, they've gone through that ESY determination and that student meets eligibility for ESY, but the parent has signed the student up for camp for a month. Well, you're still going to go through the motions of having the IEP meeting, doing the IEP amendment. I know it's a lot of paperwork, but you're going to want to document that, yes, as a team, we recommended ESY. However, the parent isn't electing for them to attend. Or on the other hand, if the school team is not recommending the student for ESY, then make sure that in that drop down ESY on the service page, that it states that the IEP team has determined that ESY is not required. And then obviously you won't have any ESY goals or service delivery. Okay, early childhood outcomes. So this is for students who are in pre-K and K and are exiting the system. So you're going to go through the ECOs. Again, I have a webpage that's linked. The whole purpose of this is to track effectiveness of that early intervention, because I always say the earlier the better, right? The earlier we can get that student in touch with services, the more successful that they're going to be. So if you have a student who has an ECO entry, they need to be in the program for at least 6 months in order to do the exit. If they don't have the 6 months worth of services, don't even worry about doing the exit. You don't need it. And they're done on a scale from 1 to 7. And it tells you as you get in there what the different ratings mean. So who completes the ECOs? It's going to be the teacher of record that goes in and does it in Ed Plan, but as a team, those members can consist of gen ed teachers, related service providers, parents, administrators, the child's team. They can help provide information for the ECOs. There is no physical paperwork, so to speak, on ECOs. It's just in the Ed Plan workspace. So here's how you go do the ECOs. I did it step by step. So here's the rating scale from 1 to 7. 1 meaning not yet, 7 meaning that they've completely mastered it. And keep in mind, again, that they have to have 6 months of services or at least 180 days between the entry date and the exit date. And then you click save. And here's just another screenshot. So there's 3 different areas. The first one is social emotional skills. And you'll answer yes or no at the very bottom after you've entered all of your information and the date. If that student has shown any new skills or behaviors. So if the scores have improved, you're going to check yes and then enter those skills that they've improved upon. Okay, relax and unwind. I have said a lot, you guys. I want to focus on you as well. Make sure that you are taking care of yourself mentally, physically. Take some time to relax. There, I've listed several ways for you to kind of just unwind over the summer. And I know it's hard, and I will admit I am not very good at this. So practice that mindfulness, meditation. If you enjoy reading, like pick up a fun book. It doesn't need to be educational related. Set those healthy boundaries. I was really bad at always checking my email over the summer. So if that's something that you need to set a boundary for, go ahead and do it, because you need to be able to come back refreshed in order to fill everyone's buckets at the beginning of the year. So don't feel like you're being selfish by taking time to focus on yourself. It's so important that you, as an educator, come back motivated and present and ready to be there for your students and their families. Thank you guys so much. You've done amazing work this year. I want to thank you for your passion, for being that guiding light in all of your students' journeys. You really are shaping their minds with your big heart. You've created classrooms where they could grow, respect, and learn from one another. As educators, we always know that your job doesn't end when you get to go home. A lot of times you work after hours, you go above and beyond your call of duty. And there are challenging and trialing times, but yet you show up every single day ready to take on a new day. So just give yourself a pat on the back. I was never one that I did that. You guys should. You've done a lot of amazing work this year. Okay, so which best describes you? Are you ready for back to school and you're like, oh, wait, no, there's school supplies? Or are you like, heck yes, it's vacation time? Whatever one it is, you guys do you over the summer. You've worked hard and earned the summer break. So enjoy your summer.
Rachel, you're muted.
Okay, let me start over. Andrea, that was
Oh.
amazing, and I agree 100% with the sentiments. Thank you for the effort that you guys have put in and for spending the year with us. I hope you've learned a lot, and I hope you've had an awesome year. We do have a few items to talk about. Benjamin shared some information in the chat. First of all, we have the OKMTSS Summer Conference coming up. We would love to see you there. It's going to be held in Oklahoma City this year. So if you do end up registering for that conference, please come and say hello. We are looking for Spark peer leaders. So anyone who was a participant in the Spark program with at least 3 to 5 years teaching special education is eligible to apply. And what we are trying to do is build a mentor network across the state. We have a lot of teachers who don't have access to the support system that some of us have access to in our larger districts. And so what we are wanting to do is establish a few peer leaders to serve as mentors. The details are outlined in the application if you are interested. The deadline for that application is May 1st, and there's details on how to apply within that link. The next thing that we wanted to talk about was the Spark contact information for the stipend. So you should have, most of you have probably already filled out the form that you need to fill out to make sure that you get paid. If you haven't filled that out, the form is attached right there in number 3. Everything that you need to complete for the CEC is due by May 31st. So you have a little bit of time on that, but don't forget to get it done. You'll need to meet all the requirements that were outlined in your initial letter. And then once you receive communication about the stipend and you get the payment for the stipend, there will be something for you to sign, which is also detailed in number 3. And last but not least, next year, or sorry, not, I guess I'm thinking of next school year. July, we are holding the special ed conference and the Spark conference together. So last year, the special ed conference was held at a separate week from the Spark conference. So we are actually combining the two this year. This will be held in Oklahoma City. When you go to register, go ahead and select the Spark track because that will open up certain registration pieces for you. But you'll also be able to attend some of the other sessions that the directors are attending. So take a look at that. And then, of course, you can always message us or send us an email if you have follow-up questions. Is there anything that I missed, Benjamin? I feel like we covered everything.
No, you did a great job. You hit everything.
Any questions? Go ahead and type them in the chat, but I really enjoyed working with you all this year, and absolutely, I love the comments, ready for vacation. And I hope you had a great year. So I guess we will plan on seeing you. Come say hi if you guys come to the Spark conference or the MTSS conference.
Oh, I would say this. And if you guys want to see any of the recordings for this community of practice or any of the previous ones, you guys can find them on our YouTube page. And if you can't find that, that is on our link tree.
Perfect.
Rachel, did you see the question from Roberta? She said
No.
the CEC website isn't logging that we have attended.
Okay, great question. So if there are issues that are coming up with the attendance, we are aware of some of those issues. So if it's showing that you missed 1 or 2 meetings, that's fine. We have a backup plan for that. If it's showing that you haven't attended anything, or it's not showing that your work is complete, then you would want to message Yasmin Brown or Marvana Bennett with the CEC. Or you can just email me and I can direct it their way. But we are aware that some of the meeting attendance wasn't logging with the CEC, but we're able to track other things from our end working with Marvana. So I think you should be good to go. I hope that answers your question. As far as access to the CEC, you definitely have it, I think, for the year. I might need to look into that, but you should have access to the content for at least the year. I know the subscriptions are for at least a year. Okay, I think that is it. Oh, question, will there be another year of Spark? We will be continuing Spark if you're interested in applying for the Spark program. You will have to apply for next year. But yes, keep an eye on the link tree for up and coming Spark events.
Also, keep an eye on our website, the OKMTSS and the SPDIG web pages on the OSDE website. the State Department website, because we will be updating upcoming events, resources, and it's just a great spot to also find what we are currently working on and some future opportunities you guys may be able to participate in.
Yeah, like he said, to answer your question, Ashley, when will the application be available? I'm not sure on the timeline on that. It'll definitely be coming up this summer. But we are trying to get it released a little bit earlier than we did last year. So we're still working through some of those issues. But keep an eye on, like he said, our website or our link tree. Great questions. I'm so glad to hear it. We've really enjoyed working with you, and have a great rest of your year and a great summer.